bit late here, and we hope that I think we will have a very interesting session, so it would be a pity that you lose it. You have seen Catherine the whole day, helping us going through the conference, and it's my pleasure now to introduce her, because just to know who she is. Catherine is a veterinarian by training, and she has, as many of us, worked as a practitioner for some time. Catherine has joined the Ministry of Agriculture in France and have worked there for the reduction of pesticides, so something she has experience already with the antimicrobials. When you pesticides is a similar situation. And Catherine has then turned to professional journalism, and since 5 years, she is the head of the communication unit at the OIE and has been exposed to many situations, crisis management, production of communication material, and also organization of meetings like this. Catherine will chair these sessions, which is the session on behavior change and communication strategies towards reduction of antimicrobial use in animals. So I hand over to the chair of this session.
Merci. Merci Elisabeth. Comme vous le voyez, nous n'avons pas vraiment un setting de session technique. Nous avons les sièges des ministres, nous allons les garder. Il y a eu une mauvaise communication. Donc voilà, nous allons commencer avec ces chaises très confortables, nous en sommes ravis. Je vais accueillir sur scène donc nos panélistes qui vont venir donc discuter avec nous lors de cette session sur la communication et le changement de comportement en santé animale. Je vous invite à monter avec moi. Quelques mots en introduction. Comme la plupart d'entre vous le savent déjà, la communication est rentrée... Ah, OK. Yeah, it's always funny. Donc, la communication est rentrée au sein des normes internationales de l'OIE en 2011. Elle n'est pas seulement entrée au sein des normes, mais elle est rentrée dans la section qui parle de la qualité des services vétérinaires. Et les normes statuent bien que la communication fait partie intégrante du travail des services vétérinaires. Dans cette session, nous allons parler de communication, mais nous allons aussi parler de changement de comportement. Pourquoi ce mot, que certains d'entre nous ne connaissent pas? Parce que l'antibiorésistance a une particularité. L'antibiorésistance n'est pas un risque qui est visible, il est assez invisible. Encore beaucoup d'entre nous, heureusement j'ai envie de dire, n'ont pas de proches qui ont eu des problèmes d'antibiorésistance ou qui ont été face à des bactéries résistantes, même s'il y en a de plus en plus. L'antibiorésistance est aussi due souvent à des pratiques qui sont devenues des habitudes, qui sont aussi liées à vraiment des facteurs socio-économiques très lourds et qui influent énormément sur les comportements. C'est pour ça qu'il faut aller au-delà de la communication, au-delà de la sensibilisation, mais aller travailler vraiment sur un changement de comportement et travailler sur les contextes qui amènent à ce type de comportement. Pour commencer cette session, nous allons donc passer la parole à Elisabeth Long, qui est experte en Behavior Change, donc parce que ça s'appelle Behavior Change en anglais. Et j'aime beaucoup dans son petit curriculum vitae, il y a une description qu'il appelle une Behavior Designer. Donc, c'est une dessinatrice, une créatrice de comportement. Elle a 15 ans d'expérience, beaucoup travaillé sur la santé mondiale et le développement. Et elle va maintenant nous présenter donc, sa présentation qui parlera de comment agissent les contextes sur les comportements et comment travailler sur ces contextes pour pouvoir les changer.
Merci beaucoup. So thank you very much. It is an honor to be here. My name is Elizabeth Long. As Catherine mentioned, I am a behavioral designer. And my focus is very much on behavioral change. So again, thank you very much to be here. It is such an honor to be in this session and to have gotten to listen to all of the very fascinating conversations so far today and to have gotten to be a part of them and also to be in absolutely beautiful Morocco. I know it's a beautiful day outside, so thank you everyone for coming back from the break, and hopefully this will be a really fascinating session for everyone. So this should be a sorry, technical difficulties. Here. Okay, sorry about that. So this should be an interesting session. So I've been asked to kick off with an incredibly brief overview of behavior change. Now, about 20 minutes is no ways near long enough to talk about behavior change. So I encourage all of you to come speak with me afterwards. And I'd love to give you more information on behavior change and talk with you more and bore you to death on behavior change. But hopefully for the next 20 minutes, we won't bore you. Now, so I'm going to talk with you a little bit about behavior change, but also about behavioral economics. And behavioral economics is a really interesting tool to understand the realities of human behavior. And what's important about understanding the realities of human behavior is that it allows us to design better programs. And we want to be able to design better programs so that we can have real and sustained, lasting behavior change, particularly around this crucial issue of antibiotic use. So, whenever we think about behavior change, one of the most important key elements to think about is what is the actual behavior that we want to think about? So this sounds like a really easy thing to do. What behavior do we want to change? And in this case, it might be use antibiotics correctly or use antimicrobials correctly. But this maybe isn't actually the best way to phrase this. What does the word use mean? And what does the word correctly mean? So we need to think about a different way of phrasing this, because is this actually a behavior? And who are we talking to? Are we talking to veterinarians? Are we talking to pharmacists? Are we talking to other distributors of antimicrobials? Or are we talking to farmers? And if we're talking to farmers, are we talking to small-scale farmers? Are we talking to large-scale farmers? Are we talking to individuals who have, 3 or 4 or 5 chickens? Or are we talking to individuals who have whole herds of cattle? All of this matters when we're talking about behavior change. So when we're thinking about designing behavior change programs, we have to know what behavior we're wanting to change and who we're talking to. Not only that, we have to think about the context in which we want them to change the behavior. So we have to ask ourselves questions. Who is the actor? As I just mentioned, is it a veterinarian? Is it a pharmacist? Is it another distributor or seller? Where are they doing the behavior? Is it at home? Is it in a marketplace? Is it in a veterinarian clinic? Is it somewhere else? Is it on a formal market? Is it on the black market? Is this an individual who's going to a market and they're doing many, many other things that day? Is this a farmer who's going to the market to buy some antibiotics for his chickens, but in the course of that day, he's also buying drugs for one of his sick children? Maybe he's buying anti-malarial drugs for one of his children. Maybe he's also buying food for his family. Maybe he's also buying some seed to plant new crops. Maybe he's also buying some other food for his animals. Maybe he's also buying some new household goods. And he has to accomplish all of these tasks during the day and still get home when it's light out. So his purchase of antimicrobials that day is just a small portion of what he's doing that day. And we're expecting him to make this very complicated decision. And we're expecting him to think about something as important as antibiotic safety and resistance, and which drug he's going to buy and how he's going to use it effectively, all in the context of all these other decisions he's making that day. And that can be a lot. So when we're thinking about behavior change, we really need to think about the context in which people are making decisions and the context in which people are taking actions. And so I'm going to talk a lot more about the context later, but first I'm going to give you what I hope is a fun example. Now, so I don't know if any of you in here are radiologists, but this is an MRI. Now, does anyone in here notice anything kind of weird or odd about this MRI? So it's an MRI of a human's spinal cord. I'll give you all a couple seconds to look at it. Does anyone notice anything weird? There's something not right in this MRI. Does anyone see what it is? Yeah, there's something funny about it. Now, if you can't see it now, there's actually a gorilla, okay, and the gorilla's kind of waving at you. Now, this is weird. Why would there be a gorilla in an MRI? Okay, you kind of think, this is a little funny. But this was a test. This was an experiment that was done with radiologists, with highly trained radiologists. 83% of the radiologists who were given this image did not see this gorilla. And you think, wow, those radiologists were really bad at their job. Think, wow, they shouldn't have been radiologists. But no, these were highly trained radiologists who were highly skilled at their job. What we call this is actually inattention blindness, okay? This is actually what we call a cognitive bias, okay? And this is a form of what we call behavioral economics. It's a cognitive bias. This is a reality of the human brain. So this is a very fancy way of saying when you're so focused on looking for one thing, sometimes you might miss other things. So in this case, what's happening is radiologists who read MRIs, they're so focused for looking for tumors. Their attention is looking for the edges of tumors. That's what they're skilled at looking at. And because they're looking for tumors, they don't see gorillas. Because they don't look, this gorilla that's waving at them doesn't look like a tumor. So they're so focused for looking for tumors that they're not seeing the gorilla. Okay, and that is a cognitive bias that these radiologists have. It's a normal human cognitive bias. So think about a farmer. A farmer is quite possibly very focused on figuring out how to keep his family alive. He's so focused on figuring out how to keep his family alive that it's entirely possible that he's not focused on thinking about antibiotic resistance in his chickens, okay? And that's not a fault of the farmer. It's very possibly a human cognitive bias. Radiologists have this human cognitive bias. Farmers can very possibly exhibit the same cognitive bias. It's not a fault, it's simply human behavior. And this is what behavioral economics shows us, that humans have these behavioral and cognitive biases that affect how we think and that affect how we make decisions. And that's what behavioral economics does. It kind of flips our traditional view of decision-making and our traditional view of behavior change. So our traditional view of behavior change is based on this idea that if you give someone information, that information makes them want to do something. If you tell someone that something is good for them, then they want to do it, and then that leads to them doing something. It's this very linear process. If you tell me to eat vegetables because vegetables will help me grow strong, then I kind of want to eat vegetables, and then I'm going to do vegetables. Then I'm going to eat vegetables, and then I'm going to grow strong. We all know that that's not really the case, that doesn't work. But we still design policies that way. We design so many of our policies assuming that if we just give out information, it means that there will be behavior change. And think about this. Think about all of the communication policies we have out there. 90% of those programs are let's give people information and let's assume that people will follow that information and there'll be behavior change. But let's think about my life. I'm not going to assume that you aren't perfect people, but I'm going to assume for the moment that I'm not a perfect person. So sometimes people give me information. They send me emails, or say they give me a brochure. And that email sits in my inbox. I read the beginning of the email and I think, you know, I don't have time to read the rest of this email right now. So I'm gonna read it later. And that's a case where information, I receive the information, but I just don't have time to think about that information right there. So I get the information, but it never moves to that intention phase. So there's this, it stops. It doesn't ever move anywhere else past that intention phase. And that's a fault for me, but maybe you guys also have emails sitting in your inboxes that don't get read. And maybe you know of cases when, perhaps you've gone to the doctor's office, or other cases where someone hands you a pamphlet and you think, oh, okay, I'm gonna read this when I get home. You put it in your bag, you think, oh, I'm gonna read this on the plane. You put it in your bag, and then, you end up recycling it without ever having looked at it, okay? This happens to farmers as well. People give them information on antibiotics. Chances are they may not read the information, okay? This happens in real life. It's also possible that you do end up reading, you do end up absorbing information, but what ends up happening next? Sometimes that information is overwhelming. A lot of times with health information in particular, thinking about information about health is daunting. It's confusing, it's overwhelming. You think, I want to go think about getting, screened for cancer, but my gosh, it's complicated. I don't really want to think about it. I don't know where to start. So we kind of just put off doing it. You want to do it, but you just think about delaying actually starting to do the decision. We actually call that ostriching. Like the animal, the ostrich, who puts its head in the sand. That's the technical term for what humans do when they don't want to think about doing a behavior. Or, I don't know if any of you have done this, but I've definitely done this. You think, I'm going to get healthy. I'm going to start a diet next Monday. Next week, I'm going to start a diet. Has anyone ever thought that? I'm going to start exercising next Monday. And then next week, you think, I'm going to start exercising next week. And then next week, you think, I'm going to start exercising next week. Okay, and that also happens. You have this intention to do something, but it just stays an intention. You never really end up moving it forward. And that's called deferral. This is normal human behavior. But we forget that humans do this when we design programs. Now, sometimes we actually do move forward and we start an action. But sometimes we don't always finish the action. We might start to sign up for a program. You're filling out a form, and you start filling out a form, and you get partway through, and you realize you need another piece of information that isn't right there. And you need to go look it up, or you need to ask someone else that information, and that person isn't reachable at that moment. So you think, okay, I'll ask them when they get home, I'll call them later. So you put the form aside. And then somehow something gets put on top of that form, and a month later you find that form again, and you think, oh, I never finished filling out. I never finished registering for this. And maybe you missed the deadline, or maybe at that point you think, oh, I should do this again. And you think, oh, I should call that person. I'll do it later. Okay? All of these things are normal human behavior, but we always forget that when we design programs. And they're not flaws in human behavior. They are behavioral and cognitive biases that get in the way of us following through on our behavior. And sometimes we do end up actually following through on our actions, and we do end up getting to an outcome. So when we're thinking of people following through on behaviors around using antibiotics responsibly, there's all these different things that can get in the way of them using antibiotics responsibly. And we need to think through all of these different reasons in the different contexts. And none of these, and this is crucial, none of these deal with blame. And none of these deal with, well, they're not motivated enough, or they don't necessarily have enough information. So, this is what behavioral economics teaches us, which is why it's really crucial. Because frequently, when we start with a base of, well, it's just information that's lacking, then we kind of get into this cycle of, well, people just need more information. And that ends up creating these programs that unfortunately, I think in the past have not been as successful as they could be. And they're a crucial place to start. And I think in some fields, they've been very successful, but now we need to start digging deeper and figuring out deeper ways to really start to crack the surface of antimicrobial resistance issues. So, just an overview of behavioral economics and what we've talked about is the brain is more like a muscle than a computer. And so we think of the brain and we think of the fact that, you know, the brain really needs to be replenished. We need to take a break and we need to take a step back. And we all know this from work. You know, you can't just work efficiently for 8 hours. You need to take a rest. You need to give your brain time to reflect. We value the present more than we value the future. We want rewards now more than we want rewards in the future. We make different choices based on our emotional state. When we're hungry or when we're angry, we make different choices than when we're calm. And this is something to consider. And this is something particularly important in low-income settings during times of particularly famine, when you're in a situation where you're living in scarcity, you're making very different decisions when you're living in situations of scarcity than when you're not. We are strongly influenced by what we see other people doing. And this is marketing 101. If you see someone else buying something, that is very much an influencer for what we see other people doing. If you see your neighbor buying antibiotics, that can be a very strong influencer for what you're doing. Even if you hear someone else telling you not to use antibiotics, well, your neighbor's doing it, so it must be okay because your neighbor's a good person. You know, that's kind of the logic that you can go through in your head of, even if someone else is telling you that you shouldn't be doing it, well, if your neighbor's doing it and he's a good person, then why shouldn't I? You know, that type of logic is incredibly powerful, and that's very normal human behavioral logic. So why is behavioral economics thinking important? So it's crucially important because it moves us past this thinking about just communication. Communication programs are crucially important, and they're a crucial first step. But as a second step, behavioral economics thinking helps us expand the types of programs and the types of interventions that we can design as part of our policy programs. So instead of thinking of just information programs, it allows us to expand our designs. So I'll give you one example of a program, and unfortunately there aren't a lot of good examples in the area of antimicrobials, particularly in the field of animal health. So this is an example of fertilizer in Kenya. And the traditional thinking around behavior change is that the hypothesis is that farmers weren't using fertilizer because they didn't understand the benefits. So if you work from the assumption that farmers don't understand the benefits of something, then you design a program just to give them information. Or the second hypothesis is that farmers couldn't afford the fertilizer. And if you assume that they can't afford fertilizer, then you design a program around subsidies to make it cheaper for them so that they can afford the fertilizer. So they did this program, and if you look at the control, which was just the information, you found that 24% of farmers used fertilizer with just the information, and 37% of farmers used fertilizer if it was heavily subsidized. Now, the researchers decided, well, maybe it was a little more complicated than that. What if we applied behavioral economics thinking to this? And what if we said, maybe it was this gap between intentions and actions? Maybe farmers had the intention to use fertilizer, maybe they knew the benefits, but they were just getting caught up in actually moving from that intention to action. And so maybe they assumed that it was the fact that farmers wanted to use fertilizer, but using fertilizer had a lot of complicated steps. If you think about using fertilizer, it's something that you have to put on your plants at a time when you don't usually have a lot of money, because you have to put it on a time right before when your plant is growing, which is when you have the least amount of money, because you have the most amount of money at your previous harvest. And if you think about your income, at that point, you've used up the majority of your income from your previous harvest. So in order to buy fertilizer, you have to save almost all year, and you have to keep that savings. So what they did was they designed a plan where you could basically plan to buy fertilizer right after your harvest, and then it would be delivered at the right time. And that eliminated all of the hassles and sort of all of the planning and all of the savings. And it made it mentally very easy for farmers to invest in this plan. And so that was their design. And what they found was that this simple redesign of the program, 38% of farmers would use fertilizer just by making it hassle-free to use this program. The same amount as if it was heavily subsidized. And you think, wow, it wasn't that the farmers couldn't afford it, and it wasn't that they didn't want to use it. It was simply the fact that it was all these hassles were getting in the way. And so what they did the second year of the program, instead of providing the subsidy, they eliminated the subsidy, because subsidies are great, but subsidies cost a lot of money and they're not sustainable. So the second year of the program, the government decided to cut the subsidy, and just this behavioral program, this redesigned program, 44% of the farmers used the fertilizer. So making it easier for farmers to purchase the fertilizer meant that close to half of them purchased and used it. So it was really just this intention gap. And you can see the communication alone, just the normal program, was still at the 26%. So this idea that it wasn't this lack of information, it wasn't this lack of motivation per se, it was really just the fact that, you know, there was all these hassles associated with it, and they needed a program that worked within their lives, and it made it easy for them to use the fertilizer. So, almost finished talking. Now, when you're designing programs, the most important thing is to focus on the behavior that you want someone to do. And you have to remember that it's not about motivation, and it's not necessarily just about information. Information is always a key first element, but you always have to then think a little deeper. Intention only sometimes leads to action. So I want to challenge you guys over the next couple of days to think about what behaviors people in your programs and in your situations are doing. All of you are either working on or helping design programs. And so what are the assumptions that your programs are making? And you may be working at sort of the more senior level, or you may be working at kind of a lower level where you're working with farmers or with veterinarians or, you know, with distributors. And what assumptions are you making about their behavior? Are you assuming that they have knowledge? Are you assuming that they have the ability to act, and what their actual context is? So come talk to me about those programs and the assumptions you're making. And we can start to think about how you can design those programs. And sometimes it's just really small tweaks to the programs. So yeah, come talk to me and just keep thinking about specific behaviors.
Merci, Elisabeth. Ce matin, plusieurs de nos intervenants ont parlé de passer à la vitesse supérieure et d'avoir un impact sur le terrain. Donc je pense qu'Elisabeth vient de vous donner énormément de bonnes pratiques pour cela. Mais comme elle l'a dit très justement, il y avait une première chose à faire avant de passer au stade de changement de comportement, c'était de sensibiliser les gens à ce que c'est que l'antibiorésistance. Comme vous le savez, beaucoup de personnes, il y a quelques années, ne savaient pas encore ce que voulait dire la résistance aux des bactéries aux antimicrobiens. Aujourd'hui, j'espère qu'on a un peu avancé sur ce sujet. Et ouais, je vais vous présenter maintenant, puisque ce sera un duo, ce que nous avons fait au niveau international, au niveau de la tripartite et au niveau de l'OIE pour participer à cette meilleure communication sur l'antibiorésistance. Ce sera donc un duo bilingue avec Taylor Gabourie, ici, qui est anthropologue, hein, qui a rejoint mon unité de communication donc, en juin, tout récemment. Anthropologue spécialisé en ethnologie et en changement des comportements en santé animale. Donc, Taylor, je te donnerai la parole après.
Est-ce que vous pourriez mettre ma présentation, s'il vous plaît? Voilà.
Nous allons donc maintenant parler de la communication mondiale qui a été faite sur l'antibiorésistance et des efforts qui ont été faits par l'OIE et la tripartite. Ah. Et avec ça, c'est mieux. Et je vais commencer, une fois n'est pas coutume, par l'histoire d'une réussite, parce que je pense qu'on peut vraiment appeler ça une réussite. C'est le travail collaboratif qui a été fait entre l'OMS, la FAO et l'OIE depuis 3 ans pour vraiment communiquer au niveau international sur ce sujet. Pour cela, on a bénéficié de quelque chose de très important. C'est un objectif clair et commun. Cet objectif clair et commun est la sensibilisation pour une meilleure compréhension de ce que c'est que l'antibiorésistance, la résistance aux antimicrobiens, si on donne dans le bon sens, à travers une communication efficace, mais aussi de la formation et de l'éducation. Cet objectif, qui est le premier objectif du plan d'action mondial qu'a publié l'OMS en 2015, est aussi le premier objectif de la stratégie de l'OIE sur l'antibiorésistance et de la stratégie de la FAO sur le même sujet. Dans le plan mondial publié par l'OMS en 2015, il y avait une chose particulière, la création de la semaine pour le bon usage des antibiotiques. On parle d'antibiotiques à l'OMS, nous parlons d'antimicrobiens, mais là n'est pas le sujet. Cette semaine avait vraiment, en 2015, quand elle a été créée, et continue aujourd'hui, a pour objectif de mettre sur le devant de la scène internationale pendant une semaine cette thématique et vraiment de pousser tous les acteurs de la santé humaine, de la santé animale et de main de l'environnement à communiquer sur le sujet et à expliquer ce qu'il peut être fait et ce que nous faisons tous pour avancer dans cette lutte. Je vous parle de réussite parce que depuis le début, depuis 2015, depuis la publication de ce plan, les 3 organisations ont travaillé ensemble de façon à communiquer d'une même voix. Ça a commencé en 2015 par la création par l'OMS d'un logo et d'un slogan qui est « Handle Antibiotics with Care », donc « Utiliser les antibiotiques avec précaution ». Dès 2015, nous avons fait ensemble des documents tripartites, mais aussi intégré ce logo dans les différents outils de communication des organisations. En 2016, ce logo est devenu tripartite, avec ce que vous voyez sur la gauche, une identité visuelle complète qui a été distribuée au pays, avec également des messages communs, des messages déclinés pour toutes les parties prenantes de tous les secteurs. Ces messages qui ont été aussi repris dans plusieurs documents qui ont été distribués à l'Assemblée générale des Nations unies en 2016, au panel du meeting de haut niveau dont vous avez probablement entendu parler. En 2017, nous avons fait un pas de plus. Nous avons créé, à l'initiative de l'OMS, mais c'est devenu tripartite tout de suite, une plateforme de communication qui permet de communiquer au grand public sur ce que c'est que l'antibiorésistance. Et donc cette plateforme, co-brandée par les 3 organisations, permet aussi d'accéder à une sorte de carte interactive où vous pouvez publier vos événements. Donc je vous invite à le faire dans 2 semaines, on va en reparler dans pas longtemps. Publier les événements qui sont organisés dans les différents pays. Ça vous permet de mettre en avant vos actions. C'est aussi une plateforme qui vous permet d'accéder à tous les outils de communication qui sont développés par les 3 organisations. Et on va reparler des outils de communication développés par l'OIE dans quelques minutes avec Taylor. Vous pouvez trouver... je ne peux pas revenir en arrière avec... Si ? Si? Ah oui. Vous pouvez trouver l'accès à cette plateforme sur le site de l'OIE, le site de l'OMS et je pense bien le site de la FAO aussi, qui sont en train de remettre à jour. Donc c'est vraiment, tout est téléchargeable, vous pouvez tout utiliser. Je pense que c'est compréhensible. Et en 2018, dernier pas, et Dr Stone en a parlé ce matin, nous avons mis en place un plan d'action, un plan de travail commun des 3 organisations en termes de communication. Ce plan d'action a plusieurs visées. Nous allons mettre en place un répositoire d'expériences, non seulement d'outils, comme on a déjà, mais aussi d'expériences venant non seulement des organisations internationales, mais aussi des pays, des acteurs autres, publics et privés, sur le changement de comportement en termes d'antibiorésistance. Donc ce sera vraiment une plateforme qui vous permettra de partager des expériences, des outils, des interventions de changement de comportement à ce niveau-là. Il y aura aussi un travail fait en termes de promotion, bien entendu, de sensibilisation toujours, puisque la communication reste importante pour déclencher l'intention de changement, de promotion, notamment au travers de la semaine de l'antibiorésistance chaque année. Mais on va aussi travailler sur le changement de comportement, et cela sera fait au travers de formations et d'aller dans les pays pour les aider à mettre en place des plans de changement de comportement sur l'antibiorésistance. Voilà les dates de la prochaine semaine. Donc on se donne rendez-vous le 12 novembre, ce qui veut dire demain, pour reparler d'antibiorésistance pendant une semaine entière, tous ensemble. J'en finis avec la tripartite pour venir maintenant à l'action qui a été menée par l'OIE et qui, vous verrez, prend complètement part à cette initiative tripartite. Il s'agissait de communiquer en matière de santé animale, puisque nous sommes l'Organisation mondiale de la santé animale, de communiquer à tous nos acteurs. Comme vous l'avez vu plus tôt dans la journée, comme le docteur Chip l'a indiqué tout à l'heure, la communication, la sensibilisation sur l'antibiorésistance est le premier objectif de la stratégie de l'OIE. Notre question était: comment faire pour faire connaître nos normes internationales, surtout le contenu de nos normes internationales, qui indiquent en matière d'utilisation responsable et prudente des antimicrobiens, qui indiquent à tous les acteurs, à chacun des acteurs, si j'ose dire, quelles sont les actions à mettre en œuvre. Vous l'avez compris avec Elisabeth, le changement de comportement dépend aussi d'un contexte. Et si on permet aux vétérinaires et aux éleveurs d'être dans un contexte où ils ont accès à ce qu'il faut pour pouvoir bien utiliser les antibiotiques, les antimicrobiens, nous aurons déjà fait un grand pas. Donc il fallait créer cette campagne pour renforcer la sensibilisation sur le contenu de ces normes et aider à leur implémentation à leur mise en œuvre au niveau national. Et il fallait créer des outils et un panel d'outils qui soient facilement utilisables par les services vétérinaires, puisque ce sont nos principaux relayeurs d'informations au niveau des pays. Donc c'est à eux que nous fournissons ces outils et ce sont eux qui les mettent en œuvre dans les pays. Par contre, je ne sais pas si vous savez ce que c'est que communiquer à 182 pays et de créer un panel d'outils pour 182 pays qui ont tous des niveaux de revenus différents, qui ont tous des situations différentes, des cultures différentes. Voilà, c'était un bon challenge. Il nous fallait donc une campagne mondiale, multiculturelle, qui touche tous les acteurs de la santé animale et qui ont leur rôle à jouer, notamment au travers des normes, qui engage ces acteurs, qui soient impactantes et qui laissent une trace dans la mémoire quand on la voit, et qui permettent de partager de nombreuses informations. C'est comme ça que la campagne « We Need You », nous comptons sur vous, est apparue. Et pour cette campagne, nous avons décidé de donner la parole aux animaux. Nous avons donc créé notre famille d'animaux, car au bout du compte, ce sont eux les bénéficiaires de toutes les actions que nous allons mettre en œuvre, puisque au travers d'un usage responsable et prudent des antimicrobiens, c'est leur santé animale et le bien-être animal que nous allons protéger, et au travers d'eux, la vie et les rentrées d'argent de nos éleveurs. Donc c'est à ce moment-là que je vais passer la parole à Taylor.
Okay, great. Thank you, Catherine, for the introduction and for kind of setting me up for success in the rest of the presentation. I appreciate the opportunity to be here to speak with everyone. And I will start by taking us just back a little bit in time before the creation of the We Need You campaign. And the OIE worked with its member countries to survey individuals to really learn and to understand what veterinary services needed to communicate with their stakeholders and who are the individuals that they're communicating with. So we wanted to know who you speak with and how. And as part of this survey, we had 133 respondents from 95 countries. So we had a very strong turnout and were able to gather a lot of information from many parts of the world. An example of this question is a question that was on the survey. Do you ever use printed material, events, media, digital channels in previous communication campaigns? And why this is important to understand is, if you're creating a campaign that's internet-based, this is a tool that maybe veterinarians and paraveterinarians would use on the internet when they're working with their patients. But the veterinarians and the paraprofessionals don't have access to adequate internet services when they're out in the field with their patients. If you create a campaign that interacts with them in that way, it's not going to be successful. So it's important to understand what are the good ways that this information can be transferred. And that's what makes it an easy-to-use tool. Great. And in addition to that, kind of building, what is the internet access in your country? We consider looking at print material instead of internet access. So here individuals have reported that 67% of their patients or targets do have good access to internet. And that's a pretty good amount. But if you're working with paraprofessionals in the field, we may need an option that's different so that they can also communicate that information in an effective way without using the internet. So another option is, in this case, you may want to have an internet option, but you may also want to have a print option. Okay? And so from this information, we were able to put together the We Need You campaign. And starting in 2017, there were a series of tools that were delivered. In 2018, we currently have the We Need You animal posters. And so we've opened it up to have many different animals. In a case where you maybe are only working with cattle and you want to have the cow poster. We do have a series of leaflets which target specific stakeholders. And we know that when you're creating a broad message that covers everyone, you're ultimately speaking to no one. And so these leaflets target individuals and tries to put the information in a situation that's relative and understandable and applicable to the audience that it's speaking to. We also have campaign videos, social media squares, website banners to continue to have that message shown in the different ways that you communicate, whether it's on social media or just in your regular emailing. We did have a request. In certain countries, radio is a popular media that a lot of farmers will tie into. And so we did provide a radio script this year that's available to be translated into a local language and to use a local speaker. And in addition to that, we also have a campaign website. And so we put together an area where you can find all of these tools in an easy-to-use site, and it's organized by stakeholder. So if you're veterinary services and you want to speak to a specific target, you can explore your opportunities and the tools available to you through that site. And the website name is down there, OIE-antimicrobial.com. Okay. And as I mentioned, we do have posters of the family, and so we're excited to have each of the new animals in addition to a family poster with everyone. Just a good way to start to get the discussion going. I'm a fan of all of them. The fish is a new addition this year. It's particularly cute. And we also highlighted specific stakeholders. And with those stakeholders, they have specific tools that are targeting them, speaking in a language that they understand, and speaking about actions that they can do that are simple. And all of these leaflets also tie in and follow the OIE international standards. And so it's an easy way to communicate about these standards in a very applicable way. And so this year we have veterinary services, veterinarians, policymakers, farmers, veterinary students, animal feed and manufacturers, wholesalers and distributors, and the pharmaceutical industry. And so really playing on the idea of we need you, and we need this to be a collective effort. We need to engage all stakeholders, because it's not just an issue of a farmer purchasing antibiotics without a prescription. It's an issue of distributors giving and selling antibiotics without a prescription. It's incentives that you may find in different parts of the chain. So it's important to think about this picture as a whole and not just one individual. And we also have social media tools. Looks like one is not quite working, but we have two that are working. We have GIFs this year, which present simple key messages, and they also use our family, and we've animated them. We have social media squares, and then we have the website banner on the bottom. Great. And this year we have video number 2 of the We Need You campaign, and we're really focusing on simple messages, and I'd like to share this video just at the end of the PowerPoint. Great. And so we do all of this work, and one of the really important things that I encourage everybody to consider and to do is not just to do your research, develop a campaign, but to also do the research at the end. Was it effective? How did people respond to it? Because it really offers an opportunity for you to learn what you could do better, and it also offers you an opportunity to refine, to find an area that you might have missed. And so in 2017, there was an assessment survey of the campaign from the previous year. There were 99 respondents from 81 countries. So again, a very good turnout with a diverse number of individuals. And we found that 90% found the tools appropriate. So the language and the messages that were being shared were appropriate for the audience that we were speaking to. And that's important to know. If we're maybe using terms that are too complex, or we're creating too many steps that make it difficult for individuals to follow through with an action, then we need to maybe break down the process more. And so it's good to know that. 37 countries reported that they had used the campaign, and using that directly, countries also maybe used it as inspiration for their own campaigns, and so it can be used in different ways. And we found that 14 countries had translated it and adapted it. And so language is a very important thing to consider. If it's not in a language that's widely known, or it's not in the right language for the group that you're working in, you do need to accommodate to make sure that it is understandable. And so through this assessment, we identified in the first campaign that farmers were an incredibly important target for disseminating communication materials. In the first round, there wasn't a farmer's tool, so we had missed it. We had an opportunity to share information and to help veterinarians and veterinary services speak to their patients, the owners of their patients, and share this information, because it's a difficult thing to learn how to communicate on. And so for 2018, we welcomed the farmers' tools. In 2018, what we have in development at the OIE, through our communication survey, we found that 98% of countries expected to communicate on antimicrobial resistance in 2018. And that was up a good percentage from the year before who had actually communicated versus who want to. So the idea is moving from intention to actual action. But one of the good steps that we see is that 51% already have a plan. So having a plan is a very good start. This year in 2018, we're aware of 8 additional languages that are being added to our campaign materials. We had new materials that were added. So in addition, we had veterinary services, the new posters, a new video, and a radio script. For veterinary students, we have a leaflet. Veterinary students actually requested their own material, so this was a nice addition. We have the farmer's leaflet and infographic, and we have media resources. And all of those can be found on the website. Okay. From communication to behavior change. So in addition to the communication tools, we've also focused on building capacity and communication as well as behavior change. So since 2014, the OIE focal points of communication have had regional seminars where we invite them to an area to help build and strengthen the capacities of veterinary services and risk communication. So far, we've had 13 regional and sub-regional seminars in those years. We've had participation of experts from both the WHO and the FAO, so really to keep this as a tripartite effort. We've had around 350 members from National Veterinary Services trained. And so it's a big effort that's really been continued for many years to reach as many individuals as possible. And it's always nice to see individuals coming back. They know the material. Some have stories about how they've used it. And so it's good to see that that information is making it into the work that they're doing in their country. And in addition to that, we also have the OIE Communication Handbook available. And this was a collaborative effort that built off of the World Health Organization's communication training. And so really a collaborative effort that was made available to our audience through Animal Health. And it is also available online. So it's not something you need to find and purchase in paper. You can also view this information electronically. Great. All right. And so in 2017 to 2018 series, through the OIE Communication Focal Point Seminars, we included a morning that was dedicated to behavior change and building with the one main topic of antimicrobial resistance. So behavior change and the theories and the methods behind it can definitely be applied to many different behaviors you want to change. But we focused on antimicrobial resistance as a priority. And so to kind of build off of Elizabeth's presentation earlier, we really focused on the idea that behavior change is not linear. Behavior change has a lot of directions it might go. And so we worked with individuals to understand that and to build a better program. As a part of that, we did ask individuals to participate in an activity that looked at concepts and methods that were presented to focal points and turned it into an exercise. And so we looked at actors, behaviors wanted, barriers that are getting in the way of that behavior becoming a reality. We looked at interventions that could be created to create behavior change. The timeline of how long this was going to take, it's important to consider because it can take a while. And then how are you going to measure it? In one of the previous presentations, they said, you have to have a way to measure the interventions that you are inputting. And so it's a really important thing to know if you're being successful. And we asked individuals to put down information on policymakers, farmers, veterinarians, industry retailer, and public/consumers. And what we saw from that was that a lot of individuals were talking about awareness. It's very difficult to create change in a topic if your audience doesn't understand this complex topic. Antimicrobial resistance can be a very complex topic to communicate on. So we also need resources, and we need funding for these campaigns. We need legislation, consistency, many of these other things that we talk about a lot, but they came through in this exercise. So I really would like to emphasize how important these pieces are. Okay, great, thank you for your attention. I'm gonna wake everybody up a little bit with a video. please. There we go. That video is available online as well as our YouTube channel.
J'espère que vous faites tous partie de la famille maintenant. Voilà. Merci Taylor. Nous avons bien parlé de ce qui se passait au niveau international et de la théorie de changement de comportement. Maintenant, il est temps de partir sur le terrain, d'aller dans les pays et de voir comment les différents intervenants dans leur pays ont pu mettre en place des stratégies de communication, des plans de communication au sein de leur plan national d'action parfois. Et pour débuter, nous allons accueillir le représentant du Kenya, Dr Othieno, qui va nous présenter le travail qui a été fait sur l'élaboration d'une stratégie de communication pour la santé animale, au sujet de l'antibiorésistance. Le docteur Othieno est le point focal communication de l'OIE, donc ça fait un moment qu'on se connaît maintenant, ça va faire 5 ans. Il est aussi journaliste et vétérinaire. Comme quoi, on peut faire de la communication et être vétérinaire. Nous en sommes des belles preuves. Le docteur Othieno a travaillé sur de nombreuses stratégies de communication en santé animale et son dernier fait d'œuvre est donc la stratégie sur l'antibiorésistance. À votre tour.
Good evening. After doing veterinary medicine, I thought veterinary medicine was so hard, so I went to study communication. But I discovered communication is even harder than veterinary medicine, because in veterinary medicine, normally when you have a patient, if it is a harsh dog, you have the muzzle. If it's a bull, you have the halter. And if you want to do a surgical operation, you simply sedate. That is not the case with the human beings. So it's very hard. I remember my first encounter was, I was told to go and encourage some farmers to adopt early maturing mango variety in a region in Kenya that plants mango. And I thought that was very easy because they have been planting the traditional mangoes which take ages to mature. So I thought with an early maturing mango variety, the only thing you need to do is the information. So when we went there and we gave them the information, the adoption rate was very, very low. And the reason was that in that community, mangoes are planted by the old people because they believe once it starts producing the fruits, the person who planted has to die. So if you are to bring in an early maturing version, then it means you're going to kill so many people. So I want to present to you the practical experience of not only developing a communication strategy, but also implementing it. We've done that in Kenya, and there's a lot that we've learned which I would really want to share with you. It has not been an easy journey. Maybe we've not done things the right way, but the thing is that we've learned a lot. Now, a brief overview of my presentation, I'm going to start with a background to this AMR communication strategy, its development, and also the implementation. And last but not least, are the lessons that we've learned during that process. So, a little background. When this problem of antimicrobial resistance started, in Kenya there are several meetings that were held, and I came in when they had a multi-sectoral meeting that wanted to tackle this problem. And I was given the responsibility of taking the technical lead in the communication aspect of it. So we started by developing a national policy on AMR and also a national action plan. In the policy, the first strategy was to create awareness on AMR across all the audience groups. And to do that, we decided to develop a communication strategy. So in developing this strategy, we had to come up with the objectives, and with the overall objective, and after that, specific objectives that was to inform the communication activities that we were going to carry out. This was done through a participatory approach that brought on board people from different sectors. Most importantly, the Director of Veterinary Services, Minister of Health, and also the people in crop agriculture, because these are the people who use antibiotics in the course of their duties. And this maybe was an example of how the One Health approach can help us in solving our health problems. So in this workshop, we started first of all by people giving the status reports on how they're using antimicrobials in their various fields and the kind of challenges that are coming up with, and also with brainstorming. And with that, we were able to develop a skeleton of the communication strategy that we wanted. We applied several tools that are used to do situational analysis, and I'm very grateful to the OIE for training us focal persons on various tools that we can use, and we actually used 2 of them in this. So we did an audience segmentation, and in this, we were trying to look at, to find out the anatomy of antimicrobial resistance, the kind of actors that are there. So we looked at who are our blockers, who are the people who are likely to come up against this fight against microbial resistance. And among them, we recorded pharmaceutical suppliers. We also recorded those who do intensive farming because of use of antimicrobials as growth promoters. We also had another group of avoiders. These are sometimes called the passive resistors, and we thought this could be the hotel industry that benefits from the intensive livestock production, and also quacks. In Kenya, there's a big problem of quacks, and we thought that once we start preaching this gospel, maybe they are likely to see that we're going to interfere with their trade, and maybe they're likely to come up in arms. We also had silent boosters. These are passive supporters, and among them were animal health workers, policy workers, and guardians, farmers, and pastoralists. Above all, we wanted everybody to, at the end of it, to be a champion for this cause. And among those champions that we currently have and that we are able to find were the community health workers, veterinarians, and medics, among others. Now, we also did a SWOT analysis so that we're also able to understand the communication geography of Kenya. And we did the strengths, and as you can see, among the strengths is that we have expertise in antimicrobial resistance, that is the vets and the medics. And at that time, we also had a secretariat that was coordinating this, and we thought that is a plus for us in this initiative. And then there was also the existence of good governance structure in our country, and presence of organizations that also do distribution of these antibiotics. Among the weaknesses is the inadequate data, which I think many countries have also noted, that we don't have enough data that we can use maybe to put across a case that there is need for policymakers even to support us. There is need for the public also to come up and support us. But that, I think, is a work that is in progress. And once we get that data, I think it will also even enable us to review this communication strategy that we have developed. We also realize another problem is that there is very low awareness. The covert nature of AMR. I think Catherine noted that. And I remember in one session when we had journalists and we were training them on this. And at the tail end of the presentation, one of them asked questions that, we've been reporting on issues of HIV/AIDS, issues of TB. And in those cases, we use human beings who have either been victims. Now, can you show us a victim of antimicrobial resistance? And I think it also got us thinking now, how can we present this so that they can also visualize what antimicrobial resistance is? But that is the problem of the covert nature of AMR problem, as has been noted. And when you're communicating about it, then you want to bring it out. But how do you do this? So I think we brainstormed and we thought that maybe we could use somebody who has had a chronic wound that is not responding to medication. And maybe that could be an example of how antimicrobial resistance is manifesting its face. But I think above all, we need maybe to come up with ways, how can a lay person understand this problem of antimicrobial resistance? Us as veterinarians, as medics, maybe we understand it, but them, they may not be able to understand it. And that is a weakness that we need to look at. The other opportunity, and opportunities, we say that there's a robust mass media, and I'll be saying something on that later on in the presentation, that we can exploit to create awareness. And there's also a global, a national, and even regional efforts to tackle this problem of AMR resistance. Among the threats was the transboundary nature of AMR problem, and also globalization, which is making movement of people to be very easy. We also did another situational analysis, and under this we did audience analysis. And here we were trying to plot the examples of audiences that we have as primary, secondary, and tertiary. And in the slide, I've just pulled out the primary audience, at least to give you a picture of what we did for the others. So we are able to have that column for the type of the audience, and then the examples, and then the information gaps, and some of the channels that we can use to reach them. And this is well elaborated in the communication strategy. Now, having done that, we're able now to come up with our specific objectives, because we already had an overall objective that was drawn from the policy. And we had 4 specific objectives which informed the activities that went into the development of this communication strategy. So the first one was that we wanted to create awareness on AMR among the primary audience group, and this was the lay public. And the second one was to improve the understanding of AMR among secondary audience groups, and these were the medics and the vets. We realized that most of them may also not be able to picture out what AMR is, and I think there's a lot of need to maybe reskill them or to do a lot of training on that. And the third one were the policymakers, and for this, we say that we shall advocate for better policy framework for AMR by bringing the policymakers on board. And the last one was the need to develop collaborations with other partners that are in AMR. We realized that there are so many NGOs, there are so many international organizations that are fighting for the reduction on the effects of AMR. And having that in a communication strategy so that we develop those collaborations, we thought could be very, very important. So under each and every specific objective, we came up with activities which we are going to do and which we're already doing. And maybe they're elaborated in the communication strategy, which we can also share later. Some of them are there in that one slide. For example, this one was targeting a primary audience, and it was the public. And you can see the activities that we want to do, the outputs, who will take responsibility, and what are the timelines, and the kind of resources that are needed, and the budget. So we did all for all the activities and even came up with an overall budget. I want to share on the implementation aspect of it, what we've done, and maybe the lessons that we've learned. On the slide, you can see far right, that is a TV program that we were able to get a pharmacist, a veterinary doctor, and a human doctor to go and talk to the public about what is antibiotic resistance and what they need to do. Also, you can see on the other end, there is a newspaper article, and actually this one was done by the principal secretary in our State Department of Livestock Development, and that was Dr. Tuimur Andrew, and with a little assistance from us. So all these activities were done during the last year's Antimicrobial Resistance Awareness Creation Week. And we also did a number of articles. If you can look, you can see that. You'll see my name on it. As Catherine said, I'm a veterinarian, but also a journalist, and I have a weekly column. And during that week of antimicrobial resistance awareness creation, I carried on a number of articles on creating awareness on the same. Okay, that is another one, and that is also another one. During the same week, we also had activities that aimed at training the nurses, the journalists, veterinary students on AMR. Now, I want to say something on maybe what has been discussed by Elizabeth on behavior change in as far as this is concerned. We did also carry out some sensitization within the team that was working with us, and we were just trying to explain to them how these things are interconnected and how when the messages that they are passing across, they are influencing people's information and knowledge, and that is also influencing how they are going to tackle the things that are out there. Further to that, we've also developed some messages, and these messages are targeting various audience groups, and it has been a very long process of doing a lot of adjustment. If you can look at the picture in the middle, I remember when we started off, we wanted to bring out that aspect of that if we abuse antibiotics and maybe use them in animals, when we export it, it is likely to be rejected in the export market. So we had a plane delivering some meat and some milk and some eggs, and it had been crossed eggs, meaning that it had been rejected at the point of receiving. But when we pre-tested that among the people whom we think that are engaged in this misuse of antibiotics, who are the pastoralists, we actually found out that it was not making sense to them. So we had to redo it again and now use a carcass in a slaughterhouse and a vet standing there and having that rubber stamp that this animal has been, the carcass has been rejected. And that, when we pre-tested, made a lot of sense to the people that we are targeting, not only the pastoralists, but also the traders who are doing a beef trade. So it has been a lot of also learning experience for us on how these messages can be interpreted differently by different people. So those are also some of the brochures that we've developed, and these ones are specifically for this year's Antimicrobial Awareness Creation Week, which we shall be celebrating and also distributing them out. They are targeting various audiences. There is one that is targeting the lay public. There is one that is we shall be hanging in hospitals, and the others that we shall also be hanging in veterinary offices that are targeting farmers. Now, what are the challenges that we faced when we were developing this and also implementing it? One of the challenges is that there's inadequate resources. This is both human and financial. For human, you find that the focal points that are supposed to be doing that also have other duties to do, and that becomes difficult. And for financial also, you find that maybe sometimes we don't have enough financial allocation. So that fourth specific objective on creating collaboration was actually aimed at filling that gap that we are seeing as ourselves are running into. And also the other challenge we've seen is that engaging this antimicrobial resistance effort and sustaining that across multiple levels of government is also a challenge that requires a lot of effort to be overcome. Last but not least, what lessons have we learned? We've learned that the mass media presents a very good opportunity. All those media appearances that we made during the Antibiotic Awareness Creation Week, we didn't pay for any, but the media was willing to cover them as news items, as publicity items, and we didn't pay for any to have that space. So I think this is an opportunity that especially we African countries can exploit to use our local media to try and pass across this message. The other lesson is that having a communication strategy in place is also very good, because we've seen when we go to partners and maybe want them to sponsor a certain activity, they want us to show them what is our plan. And when we show them that you have a communication strategy in place, they see that you are serious and they're able to sponsor maybe 1 or 2 activities from that. The other lesson that we've learned is that there are also other channels that we can use apart from the mass media. There's the social media, which is also very vibrant and also key at sending out information. And of course, the need to collaborate with other stakeholders. And those are some of the stakeholders that have been helping us: the OIE, the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Agriculture, CDC, REACT, FAO, and also a project within our ministry. Asanteni sana is the equivalent of masibuku in Swahili. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup, Dr Othieno, pour cette présentation. Nous allons maintenant voyager en Asie avec le cas des Philippines et avec le docteur Castro, Samuel Castro, lui aussi vétérinaire, point focal pour l'antibiorésistance du Bureau de l'industrie animale des Philippines. Il est diplômé d'un master en santé publique vétérinaire, a travaillé sur de nombreux programmes de santé animale, et il va maintenant nous présenter une campagne très intéressante qui est la campagne iAMResponsible. Je suis responsable en français. C'est très intéressant de voir, vous nous l'avez présenté il n'y a pas très longtemps à Beijing pour un séminaire point focal de communication. Et c'est intéressant de voir comment des pays utilisent donc leur propre campagne. On vous a présenté la campagne We Need You plus récemment, et en fait on voit certains pays l'utiliser directement, certains pays utiliser les messages, prendre les messages et puis créer leur propre campagne, l'adapter, la traduire, et c'est très intéressant de voir comment le docteur Castro a travaillé avec la FAO notamment pour créer cette campagne. Allez-y.
So good afternoon. I am Sam from the Philippines, and we would like to thank the OIE for the opportunity to be able to present our campaign on AMR. I am today with our director, the director of the Beer of Animal Industry, Dr. Ronnie Domingo, as well as the National Program Coordinator for the FAO BAI AMR project. So our presentation is, sorry, I am responsible, imparting a sense of accountability, ownership, and responsibility among stakeholders in the fight against AMR. But first I have to make this work. Okay, so let me show you a few statistics about the Philippines at a glance. So 53.76% of the country's total production is from crops, okay? And 32.89% is on livestock. The hog industry being 16.96%, as well as the poultry being 15.93%. And workers on agriculture comprise the second largest group, making up 25.4%, that is in 2017. Then 13.36% of the total production is from fisheries. So this gives you an idea of what agriculture in the Philippines is. And you can see our map. We have an archipelagic nature. We are an archipelago of more than 1,700 islands, okay? So for the swine sector, it is the most important, or let's say the top protein source of the country, okay? So we are very, very heavy pork eaters, and historically, it increases annual per capita consumption at 15.7%. And most of these, let's say, around 60 to 70 to 80% of this is in the backyard areas. And for the poultry sector, this is the second most popular meat in the Philippines, and it follows pork at an annual per capita consumption of 8.26% kilograms. And also in the Philippines, we are a country of 187 languages, and this map only shows 10 major languages. Okay? We are also a growing population of 100, or roughly more than 100 million people, with internet users at 8 million, and the literacy rate is 9 out of 10. So it's approximately 93 million people literate. Okay, so we go to what we are doing currently on AMR. The background of AMR in the Philippines is that we have been working intersectorally. We have been working with the Department of Health on AMR, and we do have an interagency committee on AMR. It's called the iComR, which is chaired by the Department of Agriculture as well as the Department of Health. And this is responsible for crafting the Philippine Action Plan on to combat AMR. And it says here, One Health Approach. Okay, so the Philippine Action Plan was launched in November 2015 during the first AMR Summit in 2015, during the 2015 World Antibiotics Awareness Week, and there is an emphasis on working together. It is interrelated, intersectoral, and it requires collaborative multidisciplinary work at the local, national, as well as global levels. So we are in line with the global strategies. This is the Philippine Action Plan. Actually, the cover there, what you see is the old plan from 2015 to 2017. However, this, we are in the process of strategizing and crafting the 2019 to 2023 plan with the Department of Health as well as the World Health Organization. And these are the KS, means the key strategies that we are employing. And you see here, key strategy 7 is improvedness of awareness and understanding of AMR through effective communication as well as education. Okay. However, you can see some highlighted things here also. Increased strategy 1, you could see multi-sectoral engagement. So you could see that communication is in every key strategy. It is essential in every key strategy. So the Department of Agriculture, with this work, the DA Technical Working Group, the Department of Agriculture Technical Working Group in AMR, is responsible for implementing the livestock sector of it, the livestock component of the National Action Plan. So this is created by a DA special order, and it is originally composed of the BAI, which I represent, the National Meat Inspection Service, NDA, the PCC, the Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources. However, recently we have reconstituted this group to include more of the concerned Department of Agriculture agencies and more private sector, okay? More private sector involvement. So during a strategic planning workshop that we did in February 2018, with the help of the FAO, we were able to gather all the regional AMR coordinators as well as the DA Technical Working Group people and discuss the different strategies which we need to concentrate on, because we have 7 key strategies, but given the limited funds and limited, a lot of things are limited. However, we have to strategize on concentrating on what we can do currently. So the topics discussed here is to concentrate on information, education, communication, and promotion and advocacy. However, because you see, whenever we do AMR activities, we ask people, the groups, the stakeholders, farmers, veterinarians, livestock inspectors, agricultural technicians, we ask them, please raise your hands, who has heard of AMR? So let's say half of the group raises their hands. Then we ask them, okay, next question. Who is familiar with AMR? Who can talk about AMR? A few hands come up. And then we ask them, who is confident to discuss AMR? Even the technical people don't raise their hands. So this is, if the technical people are not very versed about AMR, how much more for our stakeholders in the general public? So this is why we have to focus on IEC. And we also have strategies on surveillance and monitoring and policy formulation, which I will quickly discuss before I go into communication. We do have an overall framework for the Philippine Surveillance Plan. We have this planned already with the private sector, which will cover animals, AMR surveillance in pathogens in diseased animals, healthy food animals, as well as aquatic animals. We are also doing key strategy 4, regulation and promotion of rational use in AMR, wherein there's an ongoing review of the existing regulatory framework, because we really need to review our laws and our administrative orders in order for us to do AMR activities, because our regulations are very, very outdated. So this is which is why we want to do such reviews. And recently we worked with the OIE in a workshop to map antimicrobial use in animals. This was done in Manila very recently. So we now go to what we need to talk about today, which is communication. Key strategy 7 is improvements of awareness, understanding on AMR through effective communication and education. So we always should learn from best practices, okay? So one of the best practices that we are viewing is what the Department of Health has been doing for the past years. These are some of the key communication messages of the Department of Health, which they distribute in the generics drugstores and the major drugstores. If you go 3 to 5 years back, you could buy an antibiotic in the drugstores, even the generics drugstores in the Philippines. However, now, if you go to a drugstore and ask for an antibiotic, they always ask for the prescription. It's required. You cannot do that. However, in the agriculture section, it's a different thing. You could go to a agri-vet supply, that's what we call it, the retail stores. Regardless of what you're wearing or you have money, or they just give you an antibiotic. That's the sad reality, which we should address. And we are planning to address this by doing a massive communication campaign coupled with monitoring, which the Department of Agriculture has done. And these are just examples of the key communication messages that they need. I just read out one. It says, alam mo ba nang ang simpleng ubo at sipuan ay kadalasang kusang gumagaling? It says, do you know that a simple cold will eventually cure itself without the use of antibiotics? So this is one of the key communication messages that they used and has been very effective, because now the people know about such things, and they now come with a prescription. So with that view, we looked into, we need to make key communication messages specific for livestock stakeholders. That's what we thought. And again, learning from the best practices, I have been honored, it's been my honor to be part of the National Foot and Mouth Disease Eradication Program in the Philippines, wherein public awareness was one of the pillars of the campaign. In fact, we had a mascot. We had the beacon. His name is Super Pig. And this mascot went around markets, spreading the word and spreading advocacy about foot and mouth disease. And in the end, towards the eradication phase of the Foot and Mouth Disease Task Force, the slogan or the battle cry was, "Karapatan mo ang karneng sigurado." It means, safe meat is your right. Okay? So this aimed to raise awareness among consumers that it is their right to have clean and safe meat, and of course their right to demand from the government to pass policies promoting clean and safe meat. So these are some of the best practices that we learned from in coming up with the communication strategy of the Philippines for AMR. So during a workshop on key communication messages, we were assisted by the FAO in coming up with key communication messages for our livestock sector. So this was done in April 2018, and we gathered all the regional coordinators as well as the different food safety regulatory agencies, and we came up with this. I am responsible. Okay, this is the very first draft of it, and it supports the development of key communication messages on prudent use of antimicrobials as well as the promotion of good animal husbandry practices. And the target is everyone. It targets veterinarians, practitioners, it targets farmers, it targets drug companies and retail, the retail, and the local government units as well as field personnel. And with the help of a visual company, we were able to, to make it look a bit better. Okay? So this is currently the draft of the iAMResponsible campaign. It shows the different commodities, because the challenge in our work is that we are multi-commodity, right? So we have to put in a carabao, you know it as a buffalo, but in the Philippines we call it carabao, a pig, a chicken, as well as fish, which covers all the commodities that we cover right now. And it is this campaign which says, I am responsible. A veterinarian or practitioner says that I am responsible, I prescribe antibiotics only when needed, with the right dose, the right drug, at the right time, at the right route, for the right species and for the right patient. And another message is that overuse and misuse of antibiotics causes AMR. Again, we target another audience, which is the farm owners. Usually the big problem about farm owners is withdrawal period in their farms, okay? So it is, I am responsible, proper withdrawal of antibiotics is observed in my farm. So you see it's the stakeholder or the target audience owning up to the problem, okay? Taking responsibility for the problem. Okay, so I apply good animal husbandry practices in my farm, and my farm practices prudent use of antibiotics. And of course, we also cover the different sectors which we continue to develop, the drug manufacturers, to share the responsibility on AMR. And of course, we, as I mentioned earlier, we are a country of various languages, so we try to put such messages in the local languages. And with these are the different drafts of what we have come up with. And finally, we have some posters, brochures, which we have targeted towards specific stakeholders. For instance, the first one shows overuse and misuse of antibiotics may lead to AMR. Again, the requirement of a diagnosis first and the prescription. And the next one shows again, the stakeholders owning the responsibility. A veterinarian saying, I am responsible, I prescribe only when needed, I am a backyard farmer, I follow this prescription, and the next one is, I am a commercial farmer, and I observe proper withdrawal of antibiotics and apply good animal husbandry practices. Okay? So another example is this time in the local language. So the first one is actually something I picked up during a training in France. It's similar, but we had to put a Filipino twist on it. It says, kapag alagay may sakit, hindi dapat automatic na antibiotic. So it says that if an animal is sick, it shouldn't be automatic that you give an antibiotic. There should be consultation or consulta at reseta muna. So consultation and prescription first. So that's what it says. And this is an acronym that we made up. Gamot, actually, G-A-M-O-T actually means medicine. So the various messages there encompass the different sectors of what we want to promote. Okay, so this is five ways of how you can become I am responsible. Okay, so these are just examples of the different where we would want. Where we are printing right now our campaign. We have T-shirts, brochures, pull-up posters, and the like, which we distribute to our regional coordinators. And yeah, you can visit us on Facebook. We are on Facebook. It's the iAMResponsible PH Facebook page, where we continuously update. And yeah, because social media is very, very powerful, as you know, so we need to be here as well. So the current collaborations, as I mentioned, the Department of Agriculture, particularly the beer animal industry, has a project with the Food and Agriculture Organization, and this has been, we are actually very grateful for the FAO for being able to stimulate activities on AMR in the Philippines and guiding us on how to align our strategies to the global strategy. And we also have been participating in the various regional good animal husbandry practices roadshows. These are done in the various regions in the Philippines. We have 16 different regions, and we have done the GAHAP roadshows in 12 of them, wherein we talk about AMR, and surprisingly, a lot of people, farmers, backyard farmers, commercial farmers, are very interested about AMR, and a lot of questions about AMR are asked during the open forum. So this is where this is part of our communication strategy. And we have conducted various regional orientations and stakeholder engagements in the different regions in the country. And we are, another best practice that we learned from the Foot and Mouth Disease Task Force, as well as the other task forces, is that we have to have a regional approach. Yes. Okay, so I'll go to the, we celebrate World Antibiotics Awareness Week every year. And this is where we have a show of force of the different agencies to support the campaign against AMR. And this year we are doing it in, during the World Antibiotic Awareness Week last year, we had the different collegial bodies as well as the agencies actually sign a document of support for the AMR campaign, okay? And for this year, we will have a simultaneous kickoff activity in November 12, wherein the different regional offices will have an activity just for the AMR. And in November 19, we will be officially launching the iAMResponsible campaign, and we will have a press event, or we call it the Kapihan event, during that event. Okay, so, and this will be the tarpaulin that each regional office will be unfurling when there will be a statement of support from the regional executive director. Okay, and we also have a jingle making contest, which we will launch. We have launched also, and it is ending soon. Okay, so these are the joint AMR activities during AMR Antibiotics Awareness Week in the different regions, and we will have a joint celebration of AAW with the DA and DOH along with the stakeholders. And finally, this slide. Okay, so this seems to be a slide which has random people from the internet, but no. Because in the AMR campaign, whenever we go around, we would ask the opinion of others, what do you think about the AMR? And some stakeholders would say, parang impossible. It seems impossible. But let me show you this slide, okay? The first one is George Kirk. In 2023, served as a captain for 12 minutes in the USS Kelvin, saved 800 lives, and he saved his wife and his newborn son. I'm talking as if this person is a real person, but he's from Star Trek, okay? So let's go more into reality. Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, by the age 5, he performed before European royalty, died at age 35, but before he died, he composed 600 works which are pinnacles of music, okay? But what he did is some sort of stuff of legend, right? I'll go more into reality. I hope you recognize this guy over here. It's Manny Pacquiao, okay? He grew up in a shanty town sleeping in cardboard boxes. His parents separated in 6th grade. He dropped out of school due to extreme poverty, okay? He went professional at age 16, and now he is the only 8th division world champion in the world. And my next slide, and my last slide, is a picture of my daughter pretending to order pizza. I always show this because, for me, this fight is a personal fight, okay? So the little work that I do in AMR now, I know somehow will define how she lives in the future. So in whatever advocacy that we have, let's make it personal, because this fight is for our children's children's children. Thank you very much.
Merci, Dr Castro, pour cette présentation et cette magnifique campagne, et cette magnifique fille. Nous allons terminer en passant par le Pays-Bas, avec le Dr Bruschke qui va nous expliquer ce qui est actuellement en cours au niveau de son pays. Comme vous savez, le Pays-Bas est déjà bien avancé sur le sujet de l'antibiorésistance. Et donc, au-delà des plans d'action nationale et des stratégies de communication qui avaient été mis en place, aujourd'hui, il recherche les comportements, pour revenir au changement de comportement, qui induisent l'augmentation de l'antibiorésistance. Je vais vous présenter quand même 2 minutes. Le docteur Bruschke est vétérinaire, bien sûr. Elle a un PhD en virologie. Elle a rejoint le ministère de l'Agriculture des Pays-Bas en 2005. Elle est aujourd'hui la chef des services vétérinaires, le délégué de l'OIE, et elle est aussi membre du conseil de l'OIE. À votre tour. Et nous sommes à l'heure, donc vous avez 20 minutes, sans souci.
Merci, Catherine. Good afternoon, everybody. I will tell you something about the work we are doing currently on antimicrobial resistance, but to explain you that, first I will give you some of the context of our country and the work that we've done up till now. And the Netherlands is, in contrary to the countries that have presented before me, a very small country. It's 33,000 square kilometers, but we have 125 million heads of livestock, and we have 17 million people, so it's a very densely populated country. And that immediately makes us very vulnerable if you, for example, speak about emerging infectious diseases events. The picture of the world is from an article of Kate Jones. It's already 10 years old, but this one shows the risks of emerging antimicrobial resistance, and you cannot see it very clearly, but the Netherlands turns purple bright, and it has a more intense color than any other country. So our country, with the density of animals and people, is very vulnerable for diseases, but also for the development of antimicrobial resistance. We also were, a very long period, more or less the highest users of antimicrobials in the Netherlands. It was just part of the management system. And we saw that after some events of zoonotic diseases and other events that the worries about this high usage increased. There came a lot of political pressure to start decreasing the usage of antimicrobials. And since 2009, we've put in place a program to really reduce. And some of the key elements which I think are important to understand the other part of my story. In the Netherlands, which is a very well-organized country in the sense that the sectors are very well organized. They have good umbrella organizations, so we have good partners to speak with on this issue. And because of that, we believe very much in self-regulation. So basically, we said to the sectors, we give you targets on reduction of the usage of antibiotics, but you have to make your own plans. And of course, you can count upon us if you need, let's say, supporting regulation or legislation, or if you need us for the enforcement, but you have to make the plans yourself and you have to implement them yourself. The reason we did it this way is, well, first of all, because they are very well organized, but secondly, that we believe that they know best how they can implement certain changes in the sector, better than we do that at the ministry. So that is the first point. The second point is the transparency. We put in place central databases, and every farmer and every veterinarian was obliged to put in those databases all the data on the usage of antimicrobials. And these data, we could use them for the benchmarking. So the benchmarking, what do we regard as normal use? What do we regard as high use? What do we regard as low use? I will come back to that later. Another point, which is, I think, very important, that we put in place mandatory health and treatment plans. So every farmer has one veterinarian, they have a one-to-one relationship, and they are obliged to make health plans for their farms. So we focus very much on the increase of the health of the animals. So not only on the decrease of the antibiotic usage, but more on the increase of the health of the animals. They also have to make treatment plans, so they have to know the situation on their farms. They have to know which diseases they really deal with. They have to know the resistance patterns of these diseases and which antibiotics they would use on their farm when they have a certain disease. They are in very close contact with the veterinarians, and the veterinarians, we see them actually as a sort of key stakeholder. We also thought that the position of the veterinarians need to be very strong to be able to really be the gatekeeper of the health of the farms, and also to be able to really advise the farmer on what he needs to do. The veterinarians also developed veterinary professional guidelines. They have to work according to those guidelines. We have private quality schemes that ask a lot from the farmers. And last but not least, I think very important is the political will. Our politicians put in place reduction targets, first 20%, later 50%, and later on 70%. And those targets were in place, and those are the targets that we have to fulfill. What you can see in the picture here is that we had a very sharp decline, and it more or less leveled off now. So actually, what we have put in place worked very well initially, but we feel that we now have to change policy because only the reduction targets and what we've done up till now doesn't seem really to work anymore for further reduction. And we know from all the data that the reduction that we have achieved up till now also gives a decline in the resistance of the bacteria that we look at in our monitoring program. So we are now going for reduction policy 2.0. We are working on sector-specific reduction actions, so not the general 70%. First of all, because different parts of the sector did already different things. They are in different stages right now, but also because we see that the different sectors, different systems, different kind of animals, it's difficult if you are if you went very much down already to give them all exactly the similar scheme in reduction. So what we did, and I'm going to explain that in the slides coming, we did research on critical success factors. What did the farms do that have low usage if you compare them to the farms of high usage? And we are now in the phase of implementation of those results. We did not reach yet the reduction target of 70%, but it still stands there. We should have reached it in 2015 already. We are now at, let's say, 65%, but our goal is really to decrease further. So how did we do the research on the critical success factors? Well, if you look at the picture, you see the green farms, the orange farms, the red farms. The green ones are the consistently low users, and the red ones are the consistently high users over the years. So we selected farms in these both groups, and we just more or less started comparing them on many, many, many points. So we looked at all kinds of factors that are more or less facts. You know, what is the farm type? What is the animal that is kept there? What is the farm size? How is it managed? But also on other factors. How is the animal health? How is dealt with the animal health? All kinds of social factors. Where do the people live? What kind of religion do they have? What kind of social life do they have? Because we feel that the behavior but also the social aspects of the individual farmers count very much in working with them to further decrease the usage. I have to say, what we have done up till now, it's all associations. So we do not know if we are looking at causal relationships. Some are very clear, but some are not so clear. But we see in all sectors clear leads to further reduce the usage, but we do need to do further analysis on most of these aspects. That, however, doesn't mean that we do not communicate on them with the farmers and the farmers' organizations already to make them, because it's still self-regulation, make them develop their new plans for further reduction. So the veal calf is for us, the veal calf sector, we have a big veal calf sector in the Netherlands, is for us the most worrying sector actually. The decrease is not as good as in other sectors. It's a vulnerable sector. We import about 900,000 veal calves per year in the Netherlands. And they have a relatively high antibiotic usage, and they also have a relatively, I must say, low animal health. Well, what we saw in the veal calf sector, and I will look at the data of the veal calf sector most extensively. Small farms often have a lower usage. That is actually not really what we expected, because we always say that big farms can have better management, better educated people, etc., etc. But what we saw in the veal calf sector, smaller farms, lower usage. But the usage does depend on management factors. Lower number of staff, and that's quite logical, gives higher usage. So if one staff member has a responsibility for more animals, we see higher usage. As said, we import 900,000 calves. We import them from all over Europe. If we have more nationalities of calves, we see higher usage. It's also quite logical because you bring calves from different destinations together. But also, if we only see Dutch calves on the farms, we also have higher usage. You would say that's not logical because these animals haven't traveled. They all come from the same country. The idea behind that, what we think now, but these are one of the points that we have to look further into, is that these calves have lower weight because they go earlier to the veal calf sector. And what we really know is that the IgG levels, so the antibody levels in the Dutch calves are lower than in the calves that come from abroad. So that means that we have also to focus on the dairy sector, where the farmers need to take care of the calves when they're born. We also see if there's a higher number of bull calves, that we have a higher usage. So apparently, the farmers take better care of the female calves than of the male calves in the beginning. And then in the end, some of the female calves will leave, but the bull calves will all leave. Lower start weight gives a higher usage, autumn and winter, and salmonella infections, which is, I also think, logical. But there's also the social factors, and that is where it becomes, I think, very interesting. If we speak with the farmers on the way they work with their veterinarian, if they do not have so much trust in the veterinarian and they have more trust, for example, in the feeding specialist, then there is really a significantly higher usage of antibiotics. So the veterinarian, as the gatekeeper, apparently plays a very important role, but he needs to gain trust of the farmer. Or, and I'll come back to that later, maybe it's a communication problem between the veterinarian and the farmer. When farmers have the perception that the health of their calves is lower, they will have a higher usage. But if we compare all the data, farms where the health of the calves is more or less the same, it's also perception of the farmer, the way he looks at the animals. So that is also very important, and the veterinarian here is also part of the solution to discuss that with the farmer. Another important point is the social pressure that the farmer feels. So if the farmer is in an area with not many other farmers, or not part of, for example, a religious community, or at least he doesn't feel social pressure to decrease, the usage is higher. So in the communities, actually in the areas where the Netherlands has a very high density of farms, the farmers feel more social pressure and they decrease the usage better. We also have really unexplained factors that we see in these researches. When we have a longer empty period between the different lots of new animals, then we have a higher usage, which is, I would say, actually rather strange. And also, if we have the calves in more separate buildings, we also have a higher usage. These are things that we obviously have to look into further. In the pig sector, we also see that small farms have a lower usage. But if we look at management factors, we all say, you know, we need to focus on vaccination because that's very important. But what we see here, and there's some literature on that as well, is that if there are less vaccinations, they have lower usage. That can have something to do with management factors. You know, they need less vaccinations, they have just less diseases. We have to look into this further. If we have closed farms, so the fattening pigs stay on the farms, we see that the sows have a higher usage. But the other way around, if the fattening pigs are somewhere, they come from a closed farm, but they're somewhere else, they have a lower usage. So this is contradictory. More piglets per cell increases the usage. That is, I think, not very strange. We also see here points, management factors, that we really have to look further into. But these are leads for us, and these are reports, I must say, of over 100 pages, and so I can only give some points out of these reports, but the reports give really very clear leads at where can you start looking at possibilities to further reduce. The poultry sector in the Netherlands changed very much to slower growing breeds, and these breeds lose less antibiotics. They have a bit more space, but especially it's slow-growing breeds. It's not that they sit there for a month. It's maybe 1 week extra compared to the quick-growing breeds, but they do use less antibiotics. We see very many farms change to slower-growing breeds. But what also happens is that animals are taken out, the stable is full, animals are taken out, part of the animals are already slaughtered, and the others are allowed to grow for another extra week. That really increases the usage. It's a management factor to get as many kilograms per square meters as you can get, but what we see consistently is that it very much increases the usage of antibiotics, which is a management factor that obviously we would like the farmers to change that, but they also have an economic advantage by doing that. So this is certainly a point that we have to discuss with them, how we can work on this together to avoid this problem. I also think that it may be a risk for avian influenza. That's another point. We are doing the same thing with the veterinarians as we did with the benchmarking. So we also have green, orange, and red veterinarians. So we know which veterinarians are consistently low prescribers and which are consistently high prescribers. And I must say, we are in the middle of this research project. We do have some data already. And what we see here also is that the social factors are really important. Veterinarians, they want to give solutions. You know, they come at the farm, they see 6 animals, they come with a solution. And we have seen several people speaking today that have also a communication background. And what we see is that that's exactly the problem that the veterinarians have. They don't have the background to really communicate in a way with the farmers that they get the message. So that is something that we have to pay attention to. Although the veterinarians have the knowledge, it's very difficult for them to convince the farmers to do what they should do. So communication-wise, we can make really, I think, very important steps. But there is also other things. There is a huge difference in the really intrinsic motivation of veterinarians to do something. There are that are very much motivated, but there are also groups of veterinarians that still do not see that we do have a serious issue here. I think that one of the points that that we should discuss with our veterinarians is, you know, they sometimes complain that they only do everything for human health. And what I try to convince them of is that they're not only doing it for human health, they are also doing it to preserve their own possibilities to treat the animals. Because if we develop new tools, antibiotics or something else, that will not immediately come available for animals. It will be reserved for human treatments. So we will have to work with what we have now. And the veterinarians should be also for that reason motivated to make the resistance levels decrease. And one project that we are doing now, I think it's very important. We know that resistance levels decrease, but we have looked at them in commensal bacteria mostly. And we are now setting up a huge project where we are looking at all the, let's say, most important pathogens in the different sectors, and we are going to collect samples, and we are really going to look at the resistance patterns in the pathogens in the different sectors. And those data, we just started that project, but those data, we are going to use them to update the formularia. So what is the first choice, what is the second choice, and what is the third choice of usage of antibiotics? And the first, second, and third choice was always initially based on the possibility of antibiotics to induce ESBLs, but we can look at that more broader now, because there are many more factors that are becoming important over the years. So the veterinarians themselves, the ones that, because this is a project actually of the veterinary profession itself, some really see the importance, and with this kind of work we can also convince the others and make further steps towards prudent use. So actually, what are my conclusions? Well, we did not reach the 64%. And we have a communication issue with the farmers and with the veterinarians. We still focus very much on self-regulation. For our country, that is still the way to go. We, of course, do realize that there are huge differences for the country, and we have a rather specific situation, and that wouldn't work for everybody. But so what we are going to do now is look much more at the details of the different sectors, also the different veterinarians in the different sectors. And we need to get that 70%, but I can promise you, if we have reached the 70% next time that I will give a presentation for you, then the targets will be increased. I couldn't know where we end, but the 70% will not be the end. We have very useful outcomes to lower the usage, and what we've done, I think in principle, many countries could do that in one way or another, to really look at what are the critical success factors of a certain country. And, well, we believe, at least for our country, that this will help us to use our targets. And the Netherlands is a vulnerable country, but it also means that the Netherlands could be a danger for other countries. So we feel a huge responsibility here for human health, for animal health, but also for the global society. And herewith I end my talk.
Merci beaucoup pour cette intervention. Nous sommes à l'heure. Merci pour cette présentation qui rassemblait bien beaucoup d'aspects des recherches nécessaires pour pouvoir passer au changement de comportement. Donc c'est très intéressant. Je ne sais pas si vous voulez poser des questions, mais je pense que tout le monde a très envie de sortir de cette salle et de passer à la deuxième partie de notre soirée. Donc je vous invite à réapplaudir nos panélistes et à les remercier pour cette belle discussion. Merci à vous d'être restés jusqu'à cette heure avancée. Je vous rappelle que les bus partiront de devant l'hôtel du Golfe et l'hôtel Palmeret Palace à 7h30. OK? 7:30 p.m. for the bus in front of your hotel. Dernière information. Si nous arrivons à les sortir des douanes, dans les jours qui viennent, vous pourrez récupérer ces petits fascicules avec la campagne We Need You. D'accord? Prenez-la à l'entrée, elle sera disposée. Mais bon, pour l'instant, elles sont coincées à la douane marocaine. Donc, j'espère qu'elles arriveront. Je vous souhaite une bonne soirée et à tout à l'heure au bus à 7h30.